We're seeing power shifting from Western society to Eastern society. How do we build those talents in-house in Thailand or in Southeast Asia?
A lot of people gain knowledge from joining startups early on and being boots on the ground and learning from others who are already slightly ahead or miles ahead of them.
The one decision I think we made really right early on is to decide to pursue content. It's a very long-term goal, building the education center in Southeast Asia to teach people to upskill, to build technical talent.
Hey guys, Tim here for the Next Big Wave. Today I have Alvin. Alvin is the founder of Alto, as well as the host of another podcast, The Rise of Intelligence, who's quite famous in Thailand. So Alvin, you're based in Thailand. It's great to have you on the show, and I'm looking forward to learning from you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Excited for the podcast, man.
Very cool. Yeah, so this podcast is going to be quite different than what you're used to. First of all, it's in English, and I've watched your stuff. It's really cool. I obviously tried to translate a bit of the information, but it's all in Thai, and you're working with a Thai audience, and I find that fascinating. And I really want to learn about your experience building a company in Thai for Thai people, because most of the founders that I speak with here in Southeast Asia, even if they're targeting a specific country, they usually operate in English and then adapt a bit of their content to the local flavor. So can you walk me through your background, who you are as a person, as an entrepreneur, and we'll go from there?
Sure. I think my entrepreneurial journey, as I always describe it, started on very early. Like, I'm a young entrepreneur in the scene, also learning a lot from everyone else. But I started back close to 10 years ago. So at the age of 15, 16, out of high school, I took like a gap year before joining university. And I decided, like everything I learned in high school, I wanted to test that knowledge out. Like, does it really apply in real life? And I think at that age, like many other young kids out there, like everyone is still figuring out what do they want to do with their life. Like everybody's asking that question, what should I study? What should I do? So the way I decided to approach that was go on a job hunt and applied for all these startups that I knew of or that I wanted to work in. And what I would do is I would send them my resume, which was basically a YouTube videos. Like, I was recording like at 12, 13 years old, doing all these like gaming shows, podcasts, this and that. It never really picked up. But to an employer, like one of them, they looked at it and they said, wow, that's impressive. We just really needed that video guy to help us build up this other side of our business. So he decided to ignore all my resume, despite that I didn't have any work experience or just fresh out of high school. Said, cool, like come on board. And that was my first taste of a startup. It was called Work Venture. What they do is a recruitment company. And when I joined their platform, like what they were asking me to do, it was at a 5-person stage, like 5 to 6-person company. And they said, I want you to go build up this employer branding arm of the business. And he said, okay, so what we would do is we'd go to offices, we would try to position them, take videos, shoot them, try to position them as something that young kids would want to work for. And we would sell them as a package. And I started off with that. No experience, no idea what I was doing. And we did that for a year until the business picked up really well. And today, that part of their business accounted for like 50, 60%. Something that was started out from bootstrap. And the company's now much bigger, 5 to 6 years later, much bigger. And then after that journey, I think the spark of entrepreneurship kind of came upon me. Like I started to see this as a viable path forward. It was an interesting thing. And then I pursued a university career. Went and worked in corporate for a bit, left corporate job, decided to join another startup called Bloom, this time at around the age of 24, very young still. And then I said, okay, I was offered to run their whole sales team as a management position, a huge step up in my career from somebody who was previously working as an associate in strategy at Shoppee, and then before that in consulting as a management position higher. Like that was a big step up. So that's what I took on. And then we built up a sales team, learned everything from scratch, fucked up quite a bit, to be honest, as part of every learning experience, got a very good lesson in building a business, got to try on a lot of things. And that's what motivated me now at the age of 26 to say, okay, it's finally time to leave the comfort of a well-paid salary to jump on my own ship, the small ship, a rocky ship. But I think we want to shape the future of education in Thailand. We see an opportunity, and we see that in the next wave, like your podcast, the next big wave in Southeast Asia, we see similar trend. We're seeing power shifting from Western society to Eastern society. And we asked a simple question. We asked that if in the US, you see all these talent being built, the economy is built by talented people, how do we build those talent in-house in Thailand or in Southeast Asia? And we started with that mission of building a talent force in this country first, and then expanding throughout the region to equip them with digital skills, technical skills, so that we no longer have to rely on Western countries to develop our apps, to build our digital infrastructure. Especially with the coming of AI, this will be extremely critical. So that's what we see, and that's what we're building, an education platform.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what I like about your background, and something that I try to educate, aspiring founders about is you always see in movies people in university dropping everything and starting a business. And yes, there are success stories, but a lot of people gain knowledge from joining startups early on and being boots on the ground and learning from others who are already slightly ahead or miles ahead of them. And I think that's a really smart approach, not just jumping into it and trying your own. Look, this is what I did, but it doesn't happen all the time and it doesn't work all the time. If I had to go back in time, I would tell my younger self, join a startup that you think is interesting, or, apply to hundreds of them. It doesn't matter. You might get rejected by the one you want, but at the end of the day, you're going to learn so much from these startups that'll propel you miles ahead. So I think that's a really interesting point in your trajectory. And if I'm not mistaken, with the company you're working on right now, the education company, there's been a lot of trial and error, like to figure out what your niche was going to be. Talking about ChatGPT, the ascent of generative AI for the Thai population, like what was the process to figuring that out? And I'd love to learn about the trial and error that you went through.
Sure, man. Like, I think it's been now close to a year since the inception of the idea. So I started with my co-founder, who we've been best friends for now close to a decade. We met in university. We always talked about building a business someday, and we always kept in touch since then. And when we came to this idea, we said, we have a big mission, but how do we actually approach getting started? Because looking from one perspective, it's a very long-term goal, like building the education center in Southeast Asia to teach people to upskill, to build technical talent, to upskill non-technical people, right? So when we started, it was quite messy, to be honest. Like, we jumped around many ideas, and it wasn't clear from the beginning that this would be a good idea. So we tried a little bit of everything. Like, from the beginning, we tried consulting. So we thought, okay, what if we started first to consult companies? We didn't come to this idea of an education platform yet. We said, okay, what if we build up a very good consultancy to digitally transform organization? And we tried a little bit of that, and we saw, okay, market's super competitive. Do we really want to be doing this? Are we really helping people at the end of the day? And we jumped around multiple fields, from first teaching people e-commerce to then like technology. And then like we asked, what is it that people really want? And through that learning loop, we spend quite a lot of time. I would say to every young founders or every founder out there who doesn't have who hasn't been through this at least once, what I faced at the beginning was a lot of uncertainty. And I thought, is there something wrong with me? Like, is there something wrong with what we're doing? It seemed also crazy, like you don't, like, everybody's telling you it doesn't work, you're on the wrong path. It's not gonna pan out. Like, why don't you just stay in your job and then try something on the side? But there's this deep belief that we should keep going, that we should keep pursuing. And I think trust that instinct, and at the beginning, try to not listen to every single thing that's coming your way and keep experimenting. I think that's also what we're still doing. We're still finding our model of what it is that we will do to scale. But the way we're approaching it right now is we are saying we're starting off with who is our customer first. Like right now, we're going differently from before where we were trying to find an idea to sell, but we're starting with who do we want to help and what do they need? And then we're starting to approach it from that angle. And that's why in the beginning now, we're starting off with helping people learn the basic skills of ChatGPT, Midjourney, and then finding an interesting way to teach them. So our first product that's going to be launched now in June, which is getting like the wait list is building up, is about teaching business professional marketers to do marketing with ChatGPT and Midjourney to build up a marketing campaign. So business professionals gaining more technical skill. And we're doing that through cracking a case, like cracking a business case. And we're bringing up real product from Thailand. And we're saying, how do we sell this product more with a new marketing strategy, completely generated by AI, along with human co-pilot. So we're testing it out. I think in a few months, if we talk again, some ideas will pivot, things will change, but we're learning along the way, and we try to be as close as we can to our customers to learn about what they really need and build from there.
And so again, your audience is Thai. I'm just curious, these generative AI apps, are they pretty good with the Thai language? Let's say if your input is in Thai, does it create really good content in Thai?
Not so much, not so much. So I think the one that's working well is Gemini. Out of all that we've tested, what we are approaching first are people who are in more of multinational companies who are proficient in English, who can type in English, but still want to learn the content in Thai. And we're targeting those people. But we are also now partnering up with the people who are behind the development of Thai large language model. So in essence, turning ChatGPT into Thai, like fine tuning it.
Very cool. And just to backtrack a little bit, I wanted to touch base on your process, because you talked about a few different things you tried before landing on this specifically. Was your approach data driven? Were you looking at Google Trends on certain things for Thailand, or was it more gut feeling? You would try something and you'd see whether or not people were responding well, or it's a mix of both?
I would say the one decision I think we made really right early on is to decide to pursue content. I would highly recommend this to most founders building most businesses, is if you start to talk about your business and you get out there and you build very good content around it. So what we did was we built a very interesting, high quality content around AI so that we started to attract people in. And that became our first batch of customers that we could experiment on. And we would experiment ideas in the comment section, like talking to them, talking outside of the platform, like getting a meetups with them to understand what is it that they really want, what do they struggle with, understand their business. And that gave us massive exposure. I would attribute that in one part also to the rise of AI. People are generally interested in artificial intelligence topic, and there's a big demand for that in Thailand, and there's still a gap. So yes, we are still riding on that wave, but because you can do high quality content, it's about an interesting topic, and people are always consuming content, you're bound to attract somebody into your cause. Even if you start a channel and you attract, let's say 100, 200 people, that's your sample size for customer testing. And that would get you much further than if you went out or talked to your family, your friend who would be biased towards you and would give you all these validation you needed. It's much better to go out there to the customers and just test ideas out with them. So I think content was our way of testing, and then we would throw around ideas with customers through comment section. And now from that content base that we've built up. So just to give you some idea, we started in November at around 600 subscribers in the first month. So that grew very fast from our first few content because there's a real demand to now at 14,000 going to 15
Congrats.
this month. Thank you. So it's grown really fast and we got a big sample size now to test on. So what we did was once we built this top funnel, we now started to build up a wait list. So before we launched the course, we said, okay, let's just throw it out there. Like that we're launching a course, we're launching the master class, and this is what it's roughly going to be about. Who is interested in joining this? So we navigate the customer here and we ask all these questions we wanted to know about building the product. So we launched the wait list before building the actual product so that we can start to get insights and data on what the customers want and validate our own assumptions of what the customer really wants, also with a data-driven approach. And that has really helped us. So if you have an idea, just throw it out on a wait list. If you can bring in audience, that really helps.
That's really cool. And I mean, there's so much to unpack in what you just said and so much value. But just as a quick follow-up, what platforms are you using the most to put out your content?
YouTube. For us, it's mostly YouTube.
Okay. And your target audience, like, seems like they're professional people. Have you considered doing LinkedIn? Because I know you know as well, I do a lot of LinkedIn content and it's working really well for me. I'm just curious if you've explored that at all at this point.
We've tried LinkedIn personally. I think LinkedIn is getting good getting good reach for us, but because the platform is, at least a lot of my network or followers are English speakers or English tend to be more English content, it's hard for us to build up the Thai audience base on LinkedIn. At least that's what we've found. So the group of people who are following us, we see a repeat like or engagement with our content from the same group of followers who are Thai, but that hasn't expanded a lot. Yeah, I don't think we've been as successful as you are on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's all a matter of like your specific ICP, and you know where they live better than anyone. So I'm sure you've experimented. The only reason I ask is because most companies will try, you know, a variety of different platforms. So they might use TikTok to then funnel to YouTube and such. So I was curious if you laser focused on one, or if you have like an omni-channel strategy as well.
We've experimented with pretty much all of them. In the beginning, we were doing a lot of TikTok. We started off with that. We got the early traction came from TikTok. So our early traction actually came from that. But what we noticed was our content is getting progressively worse because we were focusing too much time on TikTok. You have to dilute a lot of the message down to a 1 minute and 30-second video with an interesting hook or a shocking hook at the beginning. And I think in terms of what we were approaching, we wanted to build an education. We wanted to upskill people, wanted to really teach something or bring guest speakers who can go deep into a topic. 1 minute and 30-second wasn't really our platform to do that. But right now, once we shifted more towards YouTube, it became a big focus, and our content are usually long form, like an hour and a half, and it would get longer eventually, just because there's so much to talk about in that. What we're trying to do now more is build native short form videos, because we found that worked better than just cutting out the long form into short form. So we're now trying to explore building native short form and then partnering with people. Recently, we worked with Bite Size, a local community builder in Thailand. They're a news website. They're very popular on Instagram. So we're partnering with these people to deliver technology content in short form to build up other social media. Instead of us building everything organically ourselves, we're working with people to deliver them content, and then they can help us grow the exposure.
Very cool. I'll have to look them up because I myself am struggling to build my short game. Okay, cool stuff. And you know, like the biggest topic that you discussed was leveraging content creation for any startup founder. And I never thought of using it to create an audience and validate your ideas, but I think that's super smart. And I think that's what all those founders building in public are doing is like constantly validating whether their content is in written or video. I've always leveraged content for more for outreach and marketing purposes, but I think it's super smart to use it all along the way. And I think those are really words of wisdom that people, especially today where the creator economy is going to be $6 trillion. If for some reason you're creating all this content and it doesn't lead to a startup necessarily, you're building a skill set that will be necessary or useful in the future economy, which is going to be creator based. So that is just a super smart piece of advice. So I appreciate that from you.
Thank you.
Now, you're a native from Bangkok, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were born here, raised here. So it's going to be easy for you to sell Bangkok because, part of this series is talking to founders all across Southeast Asia and getting an insight into why they are where they are, whether they migrated from somewhere or they've been here for their whole life. So can you sell me Bangkok? And obviously I'm here and it's hard to sell me on something I already love. But for anyone who's listening, how would you sell Bangkok, both for like personal and lifestyle, but also for business?
I think many people would be familiar with Bangkok. It's one of the most traveled cities in the world. People know it for entertainment purposes, but not many people see the startup or the vibrant scene that's going on here. I've lived here my whole life, and what I'm seeing now, at least from somebody who's been here for a very long time, is that when I started off at the age of 14, 15, it was a time when Thailand startup scene was booming, like 2013, 2014, 2015 to like 2016. That was a big period for the first batch of Thai startups. The big names you see today, like BitCup, Top Chirayut. Like when I was at my early stage of my career, it was easier to meet him back then. Like he was still not somebody who's well known. He would still go to events. You'd still be able to meet these OGs in Thai startup today. Back then in a small room, just discussing ideas, just throwing around stuff. And there was a peak in funding, I believe, at that time. Also, like the government was really incentivizing startups, and you saw many foreign founders come in. But then along the way, like over the past 8 years, like there's been a big gap. Like Thailand seems to be out of business for the past 8 to 9 years under the government that came from the coup, right? Like almost an authoritarian state government. So creative economy, startups kind of shut down. People pivoted their interest towards Vietnam, Indonesia, bigger markets, more startups, more vibrant young people building something new, right? And we saw that for a while, but recently I'm starting to feel the optimism kick back in again with the government refresh over the last year. And now a lot of people are coming back into Thailand, foreigners who are traveling here and staying here and saying, okay, like I'm moving away from the US or I'm moving away from Western countries because of all the turmoil and political tension there, wars and whatnot, right? Russians, we're also seeing them move here. So it's becoming a vibrant scene and coming back alive again. That's what I'm noticing now. Like I'm seeing meetups happen. Ted, who you recently interviewed on your show, is also a key player who is making this happen. He's not native Thai, but he's building something really cool in here, and he's building up a community back up again. And that's what I'm seeing and experiencing every day now. Like people are optimistic about the future, hopeful that we will rebound, and we're seeing this energy of anything is possible, anything can be done. Yeah. In the country. That's the vibe I'm getting.
That's a good summary. And thanks for the history lesson, because I have heard from other people that there was kind of a peak in startups, I guess 8 to 10 years ago. And I was always curious what happened in between, but I guess you mentioned the coup was part of the reason things kind of fizzled away. And that makes sense. What I've heard as well is, and we'll talk about this because you mentioned it too, is like the size of market, because when you operate in Thailand, contrary to other countries in Southeast Asia where there is like an English speaking market, in Thailand it's very Thai, right? Only a very small percentage of the population speak English. and therefore when you build a startup here, you have to really localize your content, your everything. So for founders, it seems like a lot of work for a smaller opportunity. So can you tell me about the market here, the market size, and if you agree with that statement, first of all?
I think in general, if you're looking for like going into different market, big market, yes, like Thailand may not be the most attractive, but I wouldn't say the market size is small. Currently, it is very much a Bangkok is the country perception, and also the reality. Like a lot of money and attention is paid to Bangkok, and it's centralized. The whole economy is pretty much just here. Like you don't really need to go up country or down to see that. Other than tourism, like the industry or money, capital, resources, infrastructure, it's all in Bangkok. But over the past few years, I'm seeing a change, a shift from Thai founders and startups. They're starting to explore different cities. I'll give you an example. One very good person who does this is called CK Fastwork, a guest who we're also going to have on the show. He was the first. He was born. He was born in Macau, raised in the U.S., grew up, made his money in the U.S., came back to Thailand, built a business, and he's now in his second business called Fastwork. It's a freelance platform very similar to Upwork in the US. And what he's trying to do now is he's trying to break the myth that Thailand is just Bangkok. So he's going into different provinces, like going in a minivan, a car, and then driving all around the country like a politician and trying to activate different cities with his product. So he's going like as a freelancer platform, he has a lot of graphic designers. So he's helping the merchants, street food merchants, designing a new banner up to promote their brand, to help build small businesses, build new brands. And that effort has resulted in more players now looking in other markets. For example, like Khon is a big market that now a lot of people are focusing attention on, which previously was out of the map. Like previously in Thailand, you would think Bangkok, Chiang Mai is up north, Phuket is down south, and then the islands, right? Now the eastern part of Thailand is explored more than, yeah. So I think like there's a lot of new areas that are still untapped, and there's big opportunities for entrepreneurs trying to build a business here, but you might have to venture into places where people have not gone yet. And I think over the next few years, if we start to build up these population, if they have purchasing power, it would look very interesting as a country. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah, I
believe.
agree. And I think overall, in terms of Southeast Asia, at the very least, the Thai population has one of the biggest middle classes. It's a fairly developed market in economy.
Mm,
So I find there's a lot of opportunity if you're able to sell to this Thai market, but it's just difficult as a foreigner to figure out what to sell and what to build specifically for Thailand, right?
mm,
It's a different culture. There are a lot of things that you might not be aware of. Similar to many countries, what I recommend founders do is move to that place for a year or two, kind of get
mm,
a sense of what works and what doesn't, get a sense of the local flavor. If that goes via getting a job at another company locally to be exposed, then so be it. But yeah, I think it's tough to just come and replicate something that worked elsewhere and hope that it works here, right?
yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of regional startups, the way they've been successful is also by localizing. For example, Grab. They understand the market, they understand the culture, they work with, so Grab is a ride hailing app. And like in Thailand, they also, in the beginning, had a lot of clashes with the motorcycle Win. In Thailand, it's called Win. And like they had to do a lot of government relation, working together with these people to find a way to bring them into the fold and try to expand their services and find which area does it work for Thailand. And what they found for them was food is a very big business because there's a lot of brands that do food in Thailand. So they went after that and became I think a sizable market for them in this country. So you just have to understand the local preferences, what the people really want, how they behave to build a good business in this country, I guess.
Yeah, there's a handful of businesses that have been able to expand almost in the whole region. You know, Grab is obviously one of them. Can you think of other businesses that have done it successfully? Again, other than Grab and Food Panda. Just curious
Mm.
if you have some insights into some business really successfully done Southeast Asia.
I think Shoppee. Shoppee has been a good player. I've worked for them before, so what I saw inside the company was they simply it's an execution driven culture, right? Like Shopee hires a lot of people compared to Lazada that focuses more on tech. Like we want to be more technical. Our platform has to be good. It works, it scales, like all those good stuff that you're taught on how to build a good startup and scale around the world. But in Shopee, what they focused more was, okay, we need to bring these merchants alive. Like we need to bring them on our platform and selling. So whatever it is that we need to do, we will do it. And they built up a huge sales force, thousands of people at their peak, just to call, like cold call merchants up, like people who were selling on the street, food vendors, like just cold call, go to them, help them, pretty much set their whole shop up, build everything up for them. Because I think in Thailand, you have to understand that people are not technically savvy. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
in other Western market where if you have a self-service, people would just jump on it and they say like, just don't talk to me, let me do it myself. In
Mm-hmm.
Thailand, people are not like that. They require more help, like hand holding in the beginning. And I guess that's what Shopee did really well. Like a lot of hand holding for merchants to help bring them onto the platform, help them sell well. And once they start to see their sales going up to a certain point, they were now committed. And then they jumped on Shopee and then they started to bring all these SKUs up on the platform. So if you're starting here, focus on the execution, go on the ground, actually really tap into people's life and then find a way to solve their problem, because it's not as easy as, oh, now we're available in Thailand and then you will do well, kind of thing.
Right. Do you think things are evolving? Because this is a fantastic story that I never heard before, like how they built a sales force that was going on the ground and recruiting resellers or like sellers to go onto online basically. And my question has been like for the past few years, I've started to think about SaaS in Southeast Asia versus SaaS in North America and Europe. And you know, you mentioned the ability to get access to self-serve solutions online and pay SaaS subscriptions for a lot of different solutions, whether it's as a consumer or as a business. And my question, because I've spoken to a lot of founders in Southeast Asia trying to build SaaS solutions, and for a variety of reasons, including the very low credit card penetration rates in Southeast Asia and such, I've never really seen successful SaaS companies, whether it's for
Mm.
B2B or B2C, or very few. So, do you have an opinion on that? Do you think that's evolving?
I think it goes back to the same root, right? Like, I think Thai people are just not technically savvy to begin with. If you look at the population, if I had to describe it, I think it's a country geared more towards creativity. Like, on one end of the stream, like you see a lot of graphic designers, you see creative product packaging that you don't see elsewhere in the world. You see good food brands, like food companies, like brands that can scale all around the world, like After You or Rosiniyom, or like all these Thai brands that you know and love. Thailand's very good at that. We're very good in medical industry. Like we have good doctors. People fly from Saudis, Middle East to get themselves treated here. It's good healthcare system. But in general, the population as a whole, we're not technically savvy. So what we found, at least from our own experience of talking to SMEs, like small business owners, is that they don't use a lot of apps. Like they use Google Sheet and Google Suite, and that's how they run their whole, like most of their business are run on a spreadsheet, or still some of them are on paper, but now more so digital on spreadsheet, Microsoft Office or Google Sheet, without knowing that there is a possibility for other apps that could help them grow their business. So we see that, I think that has really slowed down the adoption of SaaS businesses in Thailand. And the ones that have worked, the loyalty platforms or the POS platform that have worked, are very much on ground. Just like what I mentioned with Shoppee, what
Mm-hmm.
they would do, like POS companies, what they do is they go into your a restaurant, which there's a lot of restaurants and retail stores in Thailand, and they give you a POS for free, and they say, you don't pay me, just try this out. If it works, I charge you a transaction fee, and it's low cost to barrier. I go to your store, I help you set up, I help you like turn it on, teach you how to use it like one by one until you get it, and that's when I leave. Right. So that's where I think adoption happens. It doesn't happen just because you turned on the feature and then expect people to go online, search for it, and then, buy it themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, it really reminds me of how the US was 10 years ago. I mean, most businesses were run on Excel, right? It
Mm,
wasn't Google Sheet back then, but kind of screams opportunity, meaning like you're really seeing right now what was happening 10 years ago in North America. So, like any SaaS solution that helped resolve all of that in North America will eventually
mm,
be solving these antiquities in businesses, whether it's in Thailand or the rest of Southeast Asia. For me, like the biggest problem for SaaS, aside from lack of education on the availability and lack of sort of digitalization, was access to payment methods. I was in the
mm,
in the fintech space in the Philippines, and all the businesses we spoke to, whether they were small or big, 99% of them did not have a corporate credit card, which was insane to me
mm,
because
mm,
every small business in North America has a credit card. That meant that if they wanted to subscribe to a SaaS, even if they had the education and the ability, they could just not pay for it. So
mm,
I think that's where
mm,
there's a big gap in terms of adoption
mm,
of SaaS,
mm,
because you mentioned most businesses in Thailand are not super tech savvy, but the mobile device penetration is like 99%, right? So they have taken a leapfrog approach where they've like all of a sudden become super digital. Maybe they don't know about digitizing their business yet, but they're definitely not like they don't have a huge deficiency in digitalization overall, right?
It's not backward for sure. I think payment infrastructure in Thailand, if you compare it like that, it's been very good. I think among the whole world, in terms of cashless society, like we're moving towards a cashless society, I think we're second to, I think, maybe China, where it's all digitized, but we're very digital in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. On your mobile phone, you handle all your payment, your loan. You want to get a credit card, you do that. You go to any merchant, street food vendor, there's a QR code, and you just scan to purchase. So like it's all very digital at the moment. And if you are a business and you're trying to sell people any service, if you can plug into these ecosystems, then you can do very well. Or use local payment method like QR payment, prompt pay is very well built in Thailand, and it's free. It's like for merchants accepting payment compared to a credit card where you could take like 3 to 5% processing fee. Like this one is completely free. And now even with QR code, like recently app like banking apps like Kasikorn or SEB, they're introducing uh, buy now, pay later, or like installment payment with cash. Right? You don't have you instantly get micro credits into your banking apps, and you don't really need a credit card, for example, to
Mm.
to pay things in installments. So you can just use your QR code, go to any vendor, pay for it in installments just by using your mobile banking app. Yeah. So I think it's a different solution to elsewhere in the world where credit cards came first, and then now we're talking about mobile payment in the US. But in Thailand, mobile has came first. Like people were able to afford mobile first, and everything now is built on mobile. Like desktop apps, I would say you need to really consider going mobile if you want to penetrate Thailand.
Even for businesses, I mean, like I'm talking about enterprise level, are they mostly on mobile as well, or they still operate on desktop?
Depending, like if you're talking about like big enterprises, for sure, still desktop. But most small scale businesses, like 10 to 15 to 30 people, or even 50 people, their owners, their founders, their team mostly operate on mobile. Yeah, a lot of it happens through super apps like Line, for example, that can now do multiple things in one app. and these are becoming the trend. Like Line or banking app or AIS, which is a telecom provider, they're also expanding the reach of what their app can do.
Yeah, it's super handy having like your bank app allowing you to pay for your bills, to transfer money to people. Like I have to say the banking system in Southeast Asia is amazing. Just so convenient and
Mm,
free,
mm,
basically.
mm.
Okay, so let's talk about, you transitioned to being a founder about a year ago, let's say. How has that experience been for you going from being an employee to a founder? What are the big differences you've noticed?
I think having gone through a startup experience where I was front line in seeing how it actually works has helped me a lot, because when I transferred to running my own business, I was less shocked, but nevertheless shocked by how much things have changed. I think the first thing that you really notice is the fear, like learning to manage your own fear, managing yourself. A lot of people have said this, but when you actually do it, when you actually run a business, you feel it. You feel it every day, because as an employee, like good work or not, at the end of the month, you get paid. As a business, you really feel every payroll, every paycheck that you get, you process. You know that cash is like how much cash is in the bank, how fast is it running out, and then you start to like this fear kicks in to you. And I think that's the biggest difference to an employee. And the first few months, I think we really struggled with that. Like, I think it cripples your decision making. Like, you start to make decisions out of fear, like, we need to do this for short term, or we need to push this, or we need to do that. And it doesn't give you that calm decision making ability to start thinking longer term or to make rational, good decisions. That for me, I think, was the first big thing that I had to manage. And then after that point, we just have to keep executing, like reminding yourself it's all about the execution. It all comes down to doing the small stuff right, getting the customer happy. It doesn't have to be perfect from day one. It just has to be out there. And it has to, like, we have to put in our best effort to put it out there. And once you start to do that, you're seeing it paying off. Like for now, for us, it's starting to pay off, all the work we've done over the last year. Now, for me, I'm thinking more about building a team. Like, how do I build the team that embodies this culture? Thinking more about that culture element, and then what's next for us. Because when we're hiring people, from having fear of paying yourself is one thing, like fear of not being able to pay people who work under you is going to be a completely different stress level. So we're now thinking, how do we build a scalable business model underneath? Yeah, so that's where I am right now.
Yeah, the fear is there for sure, and the ups and downs. Like basically, your emotions are tied to the emotions of your business.
Yeah.
I've been there. I completely agree. Have you experienced any horror stories yet in your 1 year of being an entrepreneur?
Not yet, thankfully, nothing crazy, but I'm sure there will be scars along the way.
Yeah, and by the way, you mentioned earlier your co-founder and you being friends for 10 years, and that's
Mm,
an interesting topic that I want to discuss because I've spoken to a lot of founders who themselves are, wanting to build something but don't have a co-founder. So they go through programs, whether it's like speed dating for founders or even through things like Antler that does
mm,
matchmaking for founders. And one of the things that I've written a lot about is the importance of knowing your co-founder for a long enough time to make sure that they're compatible, because most co-founders will go through a honeymoon phase when they're building the product and like
mm,
launching it, and like the six to 12 months that you start, you don't really get to know your co-founder that well. You kind of know them through this rosy lens, but after year 2 3, things start to come out, clashes and like egos and all of that, which can really hurt the business. And the reason I mentioned this is because you've known your co-founder for 10 years, and was that intentional to build something with someone you knew that well, or was it just pure
mm.
luck? Can you walk me through
I
that
think
process?
I think I was lucky in the sense of having been through a startup that had a bad breakup in terms of founder. And I saw that whole process front and center. So it gives you a perspective that things could go really, really wrong.
Hmm.
And you really need to be careful who you pick. And I think what I've learned from that experience was it comes down to values. Like it's not about whether or not you agree on this product feature or not, but it comes down to core values. Like what do you both really believe in? And
Right.
how do you handle disagreements? Like how do you look at each other? Do you respect each other? At what level of respect? At what level of trust? And I think that for me was a key decision point, also for my co-founder. Like when we looked into each other's, it's almost like a marriage. Like when you look into each other's eye, like do you really trust the other guy to have your back, or do you think at some point this guy will stab my back and run away with things? So I think that was for me a criteria of picking a founder. And I think agreeing on the long-term vision, like where is it that we're going over the next 10 years, 20 years with this business, seeing that same vision, who do we want to help? Like, what are we building towards? What does it all come down to? And I think that alignment on that big picture is also very necessary because you come back to reminding yourself of that big picture every time you have disagreements. Every time you start to look at things differently, you ask yourself, like, does this align with the long-term vision? And then you assume good intention from the other side. You don't assume that they're trying to hurt you or you're trying to hurt them, and they don't assume that of you either. And yeah, I think having that depth of relationship definitely helps.
Yeah, that's good stuff. You're a young founder, so do you believe in life hacks? Are you the type of guy who optimize their life through different strategies, whether it's like not drinking alcohol or doing such and such? I'm curious about people's life hacks, so let me know
Mm,
if you have some.
I do. I actually, so I started to learn about mushroom extract about a year-ish ago, and I found it to be very helpful. So I use this one brand called Earth Story, like they're a new brand in the market, and they do lion's mane mushroom. What I found was whenever you take this like pill, it's FDA approved Thai brand, you instantly have this clear focus for the next 6 to 7 hours of working. It's like one person described it to me. It's like wiping off a wind, like the windshield on your car every
Hmm.
morning, and then you take all the dust or all the dirt away, and then your mind is just instantly clear. So the research says it helps boost like nerve growth factor. It helps you remember better, focus better, and get calmer whenever you work, and not so much ADHD checking your phone and talking to other people. So that has been very helpful. That's one life hack that I've used now for a year plus.
You'll have to send me a link to that because that sounds exactly like what I need. The that windshield is sometimes quite foggy, so that would be
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, anything else? No, that mostly just those mushroom extracts. Like nothing on
Mm,
you in terms of your work optimization as well, or apps that you
Uh,
use that you can't live without.
so far, everything has been on Slack. In terms of our work company, everything is on Slack. Ideas are on Slack. Trying to get Notion up and running. I know
Mm.
it's very good and people use it a lot to categorize idea, keep it on track. So we're trying to get that running, but so far I'd say like we're 60% successful, 40% of the time we don't do it. So we have to get better at that. And the other thing is like for me, what I'm trying to get back into proper routine is like exercise. It's an on and off balance for me. But at one point, I used to be very fit, very healthy, and that I've seen that really helps you clear up your mind when you're working, especially emotion wise, like when you feel fear, when you feel doubt, when you go to the gym, you clear up your schedule, you have a good workout, you come out, you're focused, you know that you can handle stuff and you've done one successful thing at the beginning of a day. So that's what I'm trying to
Hmm.
get back and running. Not always successful, but something I'm keeping in the back of my mind always.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the like. It's the basic pillars are the biggest life hacks. Like eat well, sleep well, work out.
Yeah,
If you can
yeah.
start with that, then probably you're already 90% of the way there.
Another thing
Um,
I've noticed actually, like when you said sleep well, I have a problem sleeping well too. And recently, over the last few weeks, I've tried this technique that I've learned called mind dumping. And what you do at the end of every night, like, because I usually have this thought, and I'm not sure, like, I think founders, other people who are running businesses probably do too, is you think a lot. Like, you think about your business, you think about how it's doing, think about what you have to do tomorrow. Thoughts just keep running through your head and doesn't stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't help when you're trying to get to sleep. So what you do is you put a blank sheet of paper, you write everything down, like, doesn't matter what it is, just write it all down. Get it into full thought until you're done, like until the thought completes. It can be 1 page, 2 page, and then you just throw that in the bin. Like, you just crumble it and throw it in the bin and then forget about it. And that has helped me personally forget about stuff and just go to sleep. And that has been helpful. Yeah.
So you struggle with the falling asleep, not necessarily the sleep itself. Because I've been trying to optimize my sleep as well. And for me, the hardest thing is to find a mattress and a pillow that doesn't make me wake up every few hours because it's either too firm, too soft, etc. And I know that people invest 50K in a mattress these days. It's outrageous. But without going all out, like I'm Drake or something, like finding a mattress and a pillow that works well. And I mean, there's been so many out of the box mattresses startups in North America that have either flopped or worked pretty decently. But I don't know if any of them are available in Thailand. Maybe
No clue. But if you find anything, like, do send me a link too.
Yeah, well, we'll start sharing stuff. Speaking of sharing, are you part of any masterminds for founders? It's like one of the topics I'm the most interested in, whether joining or building my own at this point. So I'm kind of curious about other founders, how they're doing.
I am not per se in any mastermind group, but I think for me, LinkedIn has been pretty helpful in that area, where I don't use it so much for marketing the podcast, but I use it a lot for networking. So nowadays it's super easy to just ask people out for a coffee chat or talk to people. And because we're in the business of doing podcasts, it's also interesting for people to want to talk to us, because they see also an opportunity to market themselves or to have a potential to join as a guest, right? So for me, I think the network that I've built on LinkedIn, meeting founders like yourself, and others, have been a good support system throughout the journey. And I do pick their brain out on topics all the time outside of the podcast, like talking about building a business, talking about startups.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're part of a good one and to utilize it to its full potential, like-minded people who have either similar or like slightly different levels of success, but you'll all each be able to bring something to the other and you're kind of hand selected. I think that's a really cool thing to build. And yeah, I haven't really used them before, but it just sounds so appealing to me.
I think that sounds pretty interesting. If there was one in Bangkok, I'd probably join.
Yeah, so maybe something I'll be working on in the next few months. I'll let you know.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we're running up on the hour here. Before I let you go, a little segment that I like to do is I ask you a question that the previous guest asked specifically to you without knowing who you'd be, and then I'll let you think of a question that you would pass on to the next guest, again not knowing who they will be.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So the question from the previous guest was, how do you stay motivated during the lows that you might encounter as a founder?
I think, to answer that honestly, I don't think you can stay motivated all the time. Like, when you feel hurt, when you feel pain, especially the overachiever or the ambitious person inside of you will always tell you, just keep on going, like, ignore that, it's a small bump, let's move on, let's go. And what I've learned, at least through coaching, like people coaching me, like founders coach, is that you don't ignore those feelings, because it never goes away. And the more you ignore it, the more it comes back to hurt your motivation level. When I was working at a previous startup and we had a big fuck up, like the business was going like this and then dropped like this, and I was running the sales team, and pretty much sales crashed overnight. You see people quitting, people blaming, people leaving. The company basically was tearing itself almost apart at that specific moment in time. I don't think I've acted well, and I was also blamed by other people that, like, hey, you're not doing a good job. You're not holding the responsibility up well. So when you go through that period of crisis, I think it's good to let that feeling sink in, because there's some lesson in that. And over the over the months that I've gone through that, the more I've tried to go back, tried to learn what actually went wrong, you learn something from that experience that you can take when you go on to do the next thing. So I would say sink into the feeling. Don't try to come back to being motivated instantly, but sink into the feeling, find that lesson, reflect, write it down, and take a bit of time, and it will come back. Like once you unlock the lesson, I think the motivation starts to come back, and you start to see the next thing, and you see, okay, I can move beyond this fuck up, and I can do better in the next time. Now I know something that I didn't know before.
Love it. Beautiful. And have you thought of a question you'd like to ask?
Let me think about it. I think I wanted to ask about people when they're finding their idea, especially the people who have done it for a while, like maybe 2 or 3 years into their business. I really want to know, like, what was the feeling like? How did you manage yourself, or how did you feel when you were at your day one? What was that feeling of being an entrepreneur like? Did it come super clear? And I want people to share more of that if you're going to ask your next guest, especially if it's somebody who's made it and people think, oh, this guy must have known what he was going to do the whole time. I want people to hear that answer, and I think it would surprise a lot of people to know that, and it could motivate many others to try and give their shot at entrepreneurship if they knew
I like that a lot.
Wasn't easy.
Yeah, basically what you're saying is most founders are clueless when they start, and that's true. And that's something that kind of freezes you as a wannabe founder. You're like, well, I don't feel like I'm that and this and that, but actually you're right. I think this is your point. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but stop overthinking, just do stuff, and when it compounds, it'll become something. And as you said, when you look back, you're really clueless when you start, but just doing works.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's the point. Many people compare themselves to like the Elon Musk or the Steve Jobs or Bill Gates of the world. I think it's not the right comparison point. Yeah. Compare yourself to where you were and then try to progress by doing, rather than just thinking your way out of a problem.
And okay, to wrap it up, do you want to throw a shameless plug?
If you're listening to this podcast and you want to learn about ChatGPT, if you want to learn about AI, how to use it in your business, I would definitely love to connect with you. I think what you said on LinkedIn, we are opening up a lot of connections there, and I would love to be connected to more founders around the region about like just talking about building up the skill set. I'm just connecting on a personal level. Yeah, like that's what I'm looking forward to.
Beautiful. I'll throw your LinkedIn link in the description so people can find you. Alvin, it was a pleasure talking to you. I think I learned a lot, and I'd love to do a follow-up at some point because there's a lot we haven't talked about. But yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, man. Like, I think I also learned a lot likewise from this podcast. It's very good for you to do this, especially as an experienced founder. We could both exchange ideas through this format. Perfect.
Beautiful. So I just stopped recording. Yeah.